So as we heard it just now, the Afghan soldiers say that they have the courage to defend their land, but the Taliban is in no rush for peace. What will be the likely scenario when foreign troops begin to leave Afghanistan?
Well, the reality is that for the last few years, Afghan forces have done all of the fighting on the ground. What the US has been providing is air support. Even by the time President Trump left office, there were only 3,500 US troops left in the country. That's down from a peak of around 100,000 in 2011. So what the Pentagon is quickly realizing is there's actually not much to withdraw. And even though the deadline is September, what military officials on the ground are saying is it will likely be complete by late July. And in fact, many of those big bases, including the Kandahar Air Base, where we used to have to line up between sort of a dozen different fighter jets and military aircraft waiting for Predator drones to land, that's all gone. Now there's really just Bagram Air Base acting as a sorting area for the last of the equipment to be pulled out. Now, in amongst this, of course, the Taliban have sensed an opportunity. They've been pushing on 3 provinces around Kabul, trying to take as much land as possible, hoping for a better hand in that peace negotiation. But to their surprise, and perhaps even to the surprise of the Afghan military, the Afghan Air Force has been pounding those positions with a lot of success, and the Taliban have failed to capture those areas. We spoke to 6 Taliban groups over the telephone. All of them were under air attack. One of them was actually under air attack while we were on the phone to them, and a couple of them said that the fighters had cached their weapons and actually gone back to ground. That was so intense. So obviously, the Afghan government really is taking up the slack here, and they're showing that they are capable. It doesn't mean they can recapture all of the countryside, because that suits the kind of insurgency that the Taliban likes to fight in. But the government has shown that it can hold those cities, and that it is very doubtful that the Taliban is going to be able to take them. Again, bringing it closer perhaps to a peace process, given that neither side can achieve that outright military victory.
And apparently the withdrawal of foreign troops has sparked fears of a reprisal in Al-Qaeda. What exactly are the concerns?
Yeah, they're genuine concerns. When I first started going to Afghanistan back in the late 1990s, Al-Qaeda were everywhere. You saw the fighters really everywhere, not just in the base, the main base where Osama bin Laden was cooped up near the Pakistani border. And already, they weren't very popular in Afghanistan with the people or even with the Taliban. And we now know in retrospect, a majority of Taliban at a council they held after 9/11 actually voted to turn bin Laden over, but that was ultimately rejected by the then group leader, Mullah Omar. So they've always had a tricky relationship. They're greatly diminished since then. They don't have the kind of numbers, they don't have the power, but since then they have intermarried. They've married the female relatives of Taliban fighters. They've had children. They've essentially Afghanized. And so with those blood ties, which are extremely important in Afghanistan, perhaps in some ways more important than any other factor, it's now impossible to get rid of them. And they have been sensing an opportunity with the withdrawal. They have publicly stated they want to launch more attacks. So a lot will really depend on what sort of peace deal can be made between the Taliban and the Afghan government, and how the US responds to that, and how the US deals with the Taliban, because it will really be up to the Taliban to control Al-Qaeda. Perhaps the biggest worry, though, for the US and for everyone is the Islamic State group. They do exist in Afghanistan, and some of the most radical members of the Taliban and of Al-Qaeda have splintered off to go and join the Islamic State group, and they don't take orders at all from the Taliban. And so again, once this withdrawal happens, the US may even end up reaching out to the Taliban if they're in talks with the government to try and get Islamic State under control. That may be an even bigger concern for them than Al-Qaeda.